like you. Be strong to hold the powers of the sun. To dream, believe.
Let's listen to Pavarotti.
Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I am your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. And I wanted to make this video this morning, and I'll have another one out to you this evening, and where I'm diving into more of the court documents in the case. But I wanted to put this video out this morning because I've really been thinking the last few days, especially as I've made the last couple of videos as it relates to the motions in limine, and the thought of the judge excluding pertinent evidence as it relates to the alternative suspects in this case, because that is going to be a crucial aspect of this. And I believe, even though I know exactly what took place in this case, in my humble opinion, but I believe it's important for the defense to be able to bring that into the trial. And if they're not able to bring what I believe truly happened into the trial, then they at least need to be able to bring in evidence to the contrary, because as much research as I've done, if you're able to adequately explain an alternative suspect theory during the trial, then the likelihood of an innocent verdict by the jury is much greater, and that is documented research. So I think there's another avenue that is very important that the defense can bring up and is very relevant to this case. And that is the fact that the greater Moscow Pullman area is not the super safe area that the media likes to portray, these nice little quiet, safe towns. Hasn't had an unaliving since 2015 in Moscow. Well, maybe they haven't had a documented one, because I know some of them they document as suicides and everything else. But regardless of if they've had an unaliving or not, they certainly have had a lot of incidents as it relates to people wielding knives and breaking in, and a lot of other things that seem really relevant to this case. What I want to do in this episode is I'm going to bring up 3 incidents that happened in the greater Moscow Pullman area here in the last couple of years that goes to the relevance of people around there carrying knives, and it's kind of a scary place. In fact, I believe they could outlaw guns altogether in Moscow and Pullman, and it wouldn't slow down anybody one bit, because those are some knifing folks around this place. So I got 3 incidents I want to bring up that are just, I mean, when you stop and think about it, you got a guy that they've made up all this evidence that has no relevance to the case whatsoever. I mean, they've made up evidence of it was his car that we know was not true. They falsified his cash data, trying to say that he was at the King Road residence, and he wasn't. He was in town probably buying some groceries. They have nothing. I mean, all their evidence excludes Kohberger, except for that miraculous DNA on the knife sheath that we all know is BS. So they've got nothing tying this college student that spent 8 years in college studying to be an expert in his field. He's a teacher's assistant. I mean, good grief. No criminal history as far as violence. And then we have these other things happen around the place that, seem very relevant. So I got 3 of them that I want to go over in this video, just to show how safe those 2 towns are not as it relates to knives specifically. Let's jump into it.
The report also reveals Kohberger, a Pennsylvania resident, was not yet enrolled at Washington State University, nor was he visiting the campus as a prospective graduate student. Pullman police tell ABC News Kohberger is no longer a person of interest in the break-in, adding, "We have no reason or evidence to believe he was involved in this burglary at this time."
A new twist in the Idaho College murders case. Officials now say the suspect, BRYAN KOHBERGER, was investigated in connection with an earlier home invasion. Diane Macedo is here with the story. Good morning, Diane.
Good morning, Rebecca. So after he was named a suspect in those student murders, BRYAN KOHBERGER was named a person of interest in an eerily similar home invasion. Now police say he's no longer a person of interest in that break-in, but the case could still have a big impact on his murder trial.
This morning, a new twist in the investigation of University of Idaho murder suspect BRYAN KOHBERGER.
Oh my God.
Body camera footage obtained by ABC News shows police responding to an alleged home invasion 1 year before the murders, less than 10 miles from the off-campus home where 4 University of Idaho students were stabbed to death. The woman tells police it was about 3:30 a.m. when a masked intruder entered her bedroom in Pullman, Washington, holding a knife.
I heard my door open and I looked over and someone was wearing a ski mask and had a knife. And so I kicked the out of their stomach and screamed super loud, and they flew back into my closet and then ran out my door and up the stairs.
According to the police report, she said the suspect was silent the whole time, and while one of her roommates quickly called police, officers found no suspect or evidence. Months later, KOHBERGER was arrested for the stabbing deaths of Kaylee Gonsalves, Madden Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin in Moscow, Idaho, where the killer also allegedly had a knife, wore a mask, entered the home in the early morning hours, and was silent as he left.
Now, you see how I chopped up that news report? And I put the fact that KOHBERGER lived in Pennsylvania, wasn't even in the area at the time, and he was not an actual suspect in that case. And then let the story roll. That's the way that the news media should have reported that story as well. But they didn't. They reported how they investigated KOHBERGER for that incident throughout the entire story. Then at the very end, threw in, oh yeah, by the way, he didn't even live there at the time. So people that didn't watch the entire article, the guilters or the uninformed public, they just heard what they wanted to hear. KOHBERGER was probably the assailant in that one as well. So it's important to report these things properly. But now when you take into account new information, you know, they said that guy was 5'3" to 5'5". Well, Ashley Jennings in the hearing the other day says Dylan's statement to law enforcement wasn't 5'10" or taller, athletically built, but what was it? Thin, but 5'10" or taller, athletically built, but not muscular, not muscular, but athletically built. Whatever the heck she said, that isn't what she said. And Ashley Jennings, the prosecutor, exposed what she actually said. She said that the perpetrator was skinny, and he was taller than Dylan, 5'8". So you're talking 5'5" to 5'8", you know, that's 3 inches. The guy's skinny, that guy's skinny. Now all of a sudden that perpetrator really kind of aligns, doesn't it? But that's just one incident. And that's a perpetrator breaking into college girl's house with a knife, with a ski mask on, dressed in black, matching the suspect description, in a town 10 miles away, just a year prior to the incident. There's one. Now let's talk about other incidents about guys with knives wearing black around the time of the atrocity. Of course, we all know about this one, but just to refresh your memory, the University of Idaho issued knife threat warning after armed man threatened group on campus 2 months before 4 students were brutally stabbed to death in targeted attack. Cops still have no suspect or motive. A group of students at the University of Idaho were allegedly threatened by a knife-wielding man dressed in black, just weeks before 4 friends were violently stabbed to death in an off-campus home. 3 housemates, Madison, Kaylee, Xana, and her boyfriend, Ethan, were found brutally knifed in the rented student home on Sunday morning with no visible signs of a break-in. Police remain baffled by the horror killings, and officials have told the Moscow community to watch out for each other with no leads on the unaliver or even the weapon. It has now emerged that on September 12th, university security issued a vandal alert to everyone on campus after an armed assailant was spotted. The warning was described as a threat with a knife, with officials saying a group of students were threatened while walking through the grounds of the university. It read, according to Fox News, the Moscow Police Department received a report that a group of students was walking between the steam plant parking lot number 14 and the Student Recreation Center on Paradise Path and were threatened by a person with a knife. The man was described as white, aged 18 to 22, and dressed entirely in black. While no one was harmed at the time, security alerted staff and students in the leafy town, where the last reported unaliving occurred in 2015 before Sunday. Dean of Students Blaine Eccles said the man in the September incident was not affiliated with the university. Of course not. He said he flashed a knife. That individual then turned himself into law enforcement. Well, I wonder why they never named him. Chief of Moscow Police James Fry said officers have not established a direct link between the sighting and the mass killing, but it raises concerns that the attacker was stalking the campus for weeks before and still remains at large. Still remains at large raises concern that the attacker was stalking the campus for weeks before and still remains at large. I gotta read this again. Chief of Moscow Police James Fry said officers have not established a direct link between the sighting and the mass killing, but it raises concerns that the attacker was stalking the campus for weeks before and still remains at large. Well, how in the heck, y'all explain this to me? James Fry says this guy was stalking the campus for weeks before and he still remains at large, and it's raising concerns. The man was described as white, aged 18 to 22, dressed entirely in black. But right here it says he said he flashed a knife. That individual then turned himself into law enforcement. So that individual turned himself into law enforcement. So why would it say that he turned himself into law enforcement, and then the next quote is from James Fry saying he still remains at large and it's concerning? Asked if the incidents were related, he said, not that we know of, but we're following every lead. We're looking into everything. We're following every lead, well, not that we know of, but we're following every lead and we're looking into everything. And it is concerning that that guy was stalking the campus for 2 weeks and still remains at large, but that individual turned himself into law enforcement. Sometimes I read this stuff and I just scratch my head. So when we go through the Latah County Jail roster, you'll see that the narcotics is still very, very much active there in Latah County. Look at these charges from everybody in their little jail. We got this gentleman in drug court in there for obstructing an officer. This guy's been sentenced, doesn't say what for. DUI, alcohol, and drugs, first offense for this gentleman. This lady, we got revocation of bail. She burglarized, stole property, grand theft. We got a parole violation for possession of Scheduled 1 and 2 narcotics from this gentleman. Look at those tats. We've got fingerprint code, drug court. All right, we've got probably a probation revocation on this guy in drug court. This lady, the women in Moscow are pretty tough, let me tell you. Look at this one. She got DUI, alcohol, drugs, first offense. She assaulted the police officer. They revoked her driving. She obstructed the officer, and she had an open container. The ladies they're worse than the men, it seems. All right, we got a revocation for this guy in drug court. This guy, Dennis Damon Murphy, he's got possession, controlled substance 1 and 2. That's METH. He's got an agent's warrant, counts 1. and probation violation, agent's warrant. Then we got sentenced inmate. This young lady doesn't say what she's sentenced for. And let's see here. We got another drug court revocation. Fugitive warrant for this lady. Look, she's tearing stuff up. We don't know what, doesn't have any charges listed for this one. Back in 9/3 of 24, just that she's in there. That's weird. She has nothing, but she's been in there since September 3rd of 2024. Brianna Marie Phillips. What are you in there for? And why don't they have your charges? That's weird. But then we got this guy. Look at this guy. This is this Dylan Wesley Thompson. In basically October of this last year, he is charged with burglary and assault with intent to unalive. So he broke into his father's apartment and tried to kill him with a knife, basically. So not a very safe town when you look at it from that perspective with these people with knives.
Moscow, a man accused of attempting to stab his father to death is competent to stand trial for the crime. The judge made that decision following a detailed mental health evaluation. 35-year-old Dylan Thompson. He's facing charges of attempted murder and burglary. Moscow police say Thompson tried to stab his 73-year-old father to kill him inside an apartment back in October. Thompson remains in jail on $500,000 bail.
You know, if that's not a advertisement for the Second Amendment, I don't know what is, because, you know, the government takes away your guns. You better get good with knives, because the criminals out there, they're already really good with knives, especially in the Moscow Pullman area. No evidence Kohberger is any good with a knife. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Post your comments, thoughts, criticisms. I'll have you another one out this evening on those docks. Until next time, though, Pavarotti's out.
Fly